All right, welcome everyone. We're Semblance of Sanity. I'm Caleb.
I'm Jacob.
And we're here for Psychopaths, episode 13. And we are getting into, I'm guessing, the more Makima-related stuff this episode.
Sure.
Yeah, we did everything with Ginoza.
We had a little break.
We had a little break, essentially, after that big monster of a reveal from the 11th episode.
That was a thing.
Yeah, and I'm glad that we had kind of differing opinions on the 12th episode. So that this one we get to kind of come into things with a, let's see which of our kind of ways of looking at things and the direction of the show they're going to take moving into this second half.
Yeah.
And now that things are kind of officially in the second half with that almost kind of, non-main plot line episode of episode 12, where do you think things are going to go, primarily?
I could see them doing one or two more episodes of episodic stuff, but then they'll get back into the Makishima plot. Because the thing is that now, after what Makishima did, you can't really ignore him.
No, not really.
So yeah,
but it's that Akane I think can't ignore him, but other people can. No, because Ginoza. Okay. Because Ginoza doesn't have to take her seriously.
Well, I'm already kind of borderline lost all respect for Ginoza if they do make it so that he just doesn't believe her. He's like, no, there's no way. We don't keep a record of what the Dominator scans or anything, even though it's, hooked up to some big hub. No, you just must have been stressed. He didn't actually have a psychopath of 0. There's that would be pretty far-fetched to
well,
say.
That's actually a great point, is that actually bringing up more points of how the Sybil system is actually being controlled by people that are not necessarily on their side, because if the Dominators don't record stuff like that if anything is kind of one of those things that
maybe it's corrupt.
Yeah, well, it's obviously corrupt.
Well, no, but
obviously. Okay, so let's move on to this episode and see what does end up happening. Oh, cool.
I read the report. I'm wondering about Tsunemori's testimony. Do you think what she says is 100% true?
We were quite thorough when we inspected the crime scene. Her distance to the target was just under 8 meters.
See?
Her position relative to the victim was also clear. There's no doubt the murderer slashed the girl's throat right in front of Inspector Tsunemori, and yet her Dominator refused to function properly.
Oh, good. Okay.
I understand Tsunemori and the victim Yuki Funahara were close friends.
Yes.
Is it possible she panicked and simply operated the Dominator incorrectly?
I would never describe Akane as incompetent.
Ginoza, I've developed a very high opinion of your skills. Normally, those of your rank are not allowed to see the classified information I'm about to show you.
Oh.
But I think in this instance, our trusting relationship allows for it. This is top secret.
Is that?
It's the record of a man's arrest. Only the police took him into custody without ever measuring his crime coefficient. The statement we released on the record, though, says he came in voluntarily. We call these rare murderers like Toma a criminally asymptomatic person.
Oh.
I don't
Yep.
understand.
Yep.
It's a classification
You were kind of right.
for cases where a person's cymatic scan doesn't match his criminal psychology.
Wow.
We estimate only 1 out of every 2 million people could be classified as criminally asymptomatic. Your case with Shogo Makishima is certainly unique, but it's hardly surprising. In fact, there's even some indication he played a role in the specimen case, correct? Toma and Makishima. 2 criminally asymptomatic men working together to commit serial murders. It's no wonder the case gave us such difficulty.
So then what happened to Toma?
Yeah.
Was he executed?
Our official press release declared him missing, suspected of leaving the country.
Oh, they're studying him.
I can tell you about this matter for the time being.
Because they have to fix the bug.
Please don't get hung up on the specifics of what you heard. The important thing is no one has fallen victim to Kozaburo Tomo's murderous impulses since that day. We just made him disappear. You are to bring down Shogo Makishima. He must be isolated from society as soon as possible. But don't harm him. Immediate punishment or execution still requires Sybil's input.
Yes, I understand.
Ginoza, it's essential that you bring him to PSB alive. Then you can leave the rest to me. Shogo Makishima will never again threaten our quest for a more perfect society.
Okay.
Just as Kozaburo Toma hasn't.
Did you have the funeral yet?
2 days ago.
You sound like you've already recovered pretty well, too.
Well, I can't mope around forever. Not with Shogo Makishima still out
Almost
there.
too quickly.
He
Yeah.
killed my friend right in front of me. And he killed yours too. As horrible as this sounds, there is one bright side to this nightmare we're going through. Now we know Makishima is real. No one will ever doubt your police work again. From here on out, we share the same goal. We do whatever it takes to get Makishima and avenge our friends' murders.
Is that Kogami?
Yes, Kaguri must have told him about my plans to do a memory scoop.
Maybe you should talk to him.
It'd be a waste of time. He just tried to convince me it's a bad idea, even though he's always taking risks himself.
I don't like it either. Too risky. And your psychopath has already been clouded enough from the murder. Worst case scenario,
Has it though?
you would end up becoming a latent criminal yourself.
The chief gave us orders. Do not conduct a public investigation.
Yes, because this is a very sensitive matter. There's an elite team investigating.
Gotcha. So he's
letting
telling
them
Reach their
know.
official
Yeah,
report
okay,
here not
cool.
To tell us
Good.
all what happened.
We can't wait for some secret report. If it's not a public case, it's hard to get clues. We need a clear image of him.
I'm liking this.
Yeah, this is cool.
Only 34?
I'll be
That's not
honest,
clouded at all.
Condition and psychopaths the whole time.
Don't worry, I trust you, Kuranamori.
All right, all right. Relax and leave the rest to me. You'll come through this just fine.
What was her psychopath
Focus
before?
your
Like
thoughts on the
19?
moment when you first
Probably.
met Makishima.
Okay.
Once I can lock in on the specific brain signal from that memory, I'll amplify it. But be prepared for it to cause you severe emotional distress.
Okay, I'm ready for it.
Perfect. I'll start now then.
Oh, cool.
Nice.
It'd be so trippy.
Oh yeah.
There's a good conversation starter. How do we define criminal? Maybe that dominator you're holding. Shall we allow the civil system, that which governs it, to
These
decide?
visuals are amazing.
Yeah.
Not enough resolve. How very regrettable for you. Your failure has cost your friend's life.
Yuki, no!
I got it.
I'm trying!
Inspector, are you okay? Inspector, come back to us! Hey! Wake up, Akane! Sorry.
Ginoza.
Yeah. Are you okay? How's her psychopath?
So far, so good. Her hue curve is within regulation value, and her crime coefficient is incredible. It spiked
Still
for a moment, but then it
34.
stabilized and is already showing signs of recovery.
Inspector Tsunemori.
See? I told you it would work.
I can't believe you did it.
Where's Masayoka? There we go.
Yeah.
I believe you want to talk to me alone. What's next? Tomorrow there's a blizzard?
There's 0% chance of precipitation this week.
What are you, a robot? I'm just making an old joke, Inspector. So, what is it you want?
It's about Inspector Tsunemori. I have some questions.
Yeah, what about the little missy?
Why doesn't her hue get clouded? What's her secret to managing her stress so well?
Why would you think I have the answer?
It just seems like you're closer to her than me.
I doubt I know more about her emotions than you, but one thing I am sure of. The prospect of her crime coefficient changing does not give her any anxiety whatsoever.
Whoa.
Let me see if I can
Yeah?
get this right. It's like she accepts things as they are. She acknowledges society, then forgives it, then moves on.
Wow.
From this inner
Dang.
peace comes an ability to take risks. She's confident enough to zig when everybody else tells her to zag. And still, she's fully committed to being a detective, even has the skills to be a great one.
Whereas Ginoza's
Are you
constantly
trying to tell
getting
me that you
worried.
have lost that commitment?
Maybe. I don't know. See, when I was her age, I had the same belief in justice and society's need for a good detective. Then I had to trade in my pistol for a new gun that could talk back to me. One that would only let me shoot when it had made up its electronic mind that I needed to capture or kill someone. It pissed me the hell off. The gun never said it, but it clearly told me my detective work was obsolete.
Yeah.
I dwelled on it.
Whoa,
and the
that's a-
angrier I got, the
that's a
cloudier
shot.
my psycho
Yeah.
brains got.
If you question the system that much, why not quit the MWPSB? Instead, you made me and Mom pay the price when you gave up. When you stopped believing in the New Order. God
Oh
damn
my
it, how can you
God.
even stand here and whine about dominators to me?
You're right, Ginoza. I complain. Talk about taking some stand against the man. And yet I'm still here working a beat.
You began doubting the Sybil system, and then it began doubting you.
Oh.
Like it or not, a new order was born, and the world and I moved on without you.
Yeah, and I guess my initial doubts might have even been misplaced. By the time I stopped being angry, and I made my peace with this world, my crime coefficient had stabilized. Man, talk about being late to the party, huh, kid?
Wow.
So, what about you then? Your hue. Are you maintaining a nice clear color on it?
I don't need you pretending to care about my psychopaths. So you can stop with this sad concerned father routine.
Nah, it's more like a subordinate concerned for his boss, one who's due for a promotion. It's like what I was saying about my hue clouding up. If you begin questioning your job one day, the next might see you getting frustrated and angry about the world around you, so be careful. I don't want
Yeah.
to see you fall into the same spiral that led to me getting labeled a latent criminal, son.
Okay. Wow.
Wow.
We had such a big
That-
info dump of good stuff
that-
this episode.
What a way to make up for the last episode. Like, wow.
All right, so I think it's basically two things of primary importance that need to be discussed here.
Yes.
It's the criminally asymptomatic
Right.
identification thing that they've given to
Yep.
not just Makishima and not just Toma,
But,
but previous people, because 1 in 2 million is a
That's-
large number of people, actually, if you think about
right,
it.
that's what, 3,500 people in the world?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
That's a number that goes like into kind of a like an actual representative group at some point, because
Right.
what happens when you have a system that's so perfect that the belief in that system being perfect is actually what's keeping it afloat, and
Right.
anything that represents a flaw in the system has to be thrown under the rug
Yeah.
as kind of a skeleton in the closet.
And I like the way that they're doing it, because as I said before the video, I was very worried that either Ginoza was not going to believe Akane,
Right.
or when it
Which would be
started,
dumb.
I thought it was going to be something where the lady didn't believe Ginoza.
Yeah.
But instead, and I also thought, after she said, we need to keep this hush-hush, that Ginoza was have to come up with some other story, like,
Right.
for Akane
Yeah,
and
the
everybody.
other story is for the public.
It's for the public,
but not for the MWPSB.
right, and they all
which is
know,
great.
okay, this is going on, we need to take him down hard and fast.
Right. And essentially, they're all being duped to some extent to believe that the system demands this. Basically, that society, as being a perfect utopia, needs Makishima to be kind of erased and removed.
Sure.
But the way they talked about people like Toma in the past doesn't make it sound like they killed him.
No.
It makes it seem like they are taking these people in and using them, like studying them.
Right.
And actually
like in
trying
that
to
300 plus facility.
yeah, exactly. So what happens if you have someone that essentially has the psychopath's immunity trait,
Right.
the criminally asymptomatic, as they're calling it, and you have this system, and they're able to track things like this. What can you gain out of actually bringing those people in and studying them, because I think to some extent you're limited to what you can discover biologically.
Yeah.
That's kind of a theory, but I think you will eventually lose value in having these people. So
well, I think what they need to do is they need to figure out some new way to figure out the psychopaths for those people specifically that doesn't involve the somatic scans or whatever.
Right. And what I'm thinking is that they, like, this is crazy town. But with Makishima in particular, you can kind of look at how he is maybe the perfect criminally asymptomatic person, because he's been gathering, maybe looking for other criminally asymptomatic people. But I get the whole vibe thing of one of my previous theories that he was involved in some kind of government experiment thing, right?
Okay.
And that he was one of the ones that actually was able to get out, and he knows about it. Therefore, his goal right now is looking for other people like that so that they can take down the Sybil system together. And if there's 3,500 of them potentially in the world, that's a large number of people. You can do quite a lot with just 100. But if he could gather essentially a way to find all 3,500 of those people,
and maybe that's
he could do some damage.
And maybe that's why he was or no, because a lot of the people that he was talking with, they were not criminally asymptomatic.
They were not, but maybe he thought they could have been.
Sure, possibly. Yeah.
Maybe if anything, he thought that they could potentially become criminally asymptomatic.
That would be interesting.
That would be another thing that's interesting, is that he's trying to actually generate more people like him.
That would be the perfect way to take down the Sybil system, because if it's just 1 in every 2 million, then that can kind of be swept in the rug. You'll have to work at it and stuff, but that can happen. But if he has a way to make people criminally asymptomatic, then the Sybil system, he doesn't have to destroy it, it would just become obsolete.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So I think he needs some kind of scale of magnitude effect in order to do that, and I think that actually involves him at some point intentionally letting himself get captured so that he can get close to what the core of the Sybil system actually is.
Okay.
And the more and more I think about it, the Sybil system doesn't strike me as an AI, because what you have here is basically the potential for the Sybil system to learn, right?
Yeah.
I don't think the Sybil system is in a case where it's actually learning. Otherwise, they would be able to present the information to this AI of criminally asymptomatic people, and it would find a workaround for that.
Yeah.
In effect, they would be able to scan people whose psychopaths don't waver to the extent that they could identify criminally asymptomatic people.
Sure.
Sorry, I need to breathe here for a second. And actually gather those people from society and kind of pluck them out. But they're not able to do that. Right. And which means that it's not something perfect in its learning capacity.
It's not black and white also.
Sure.
Because I would say the reason, because if they know about this whole idea of criminally asymptomatic people, it would actually be pretty easy to just install some subroutine into the Sybil system to basically pick out all the outliers. But I think the reason they're not doing that is because there's a lot of shades of gray with that, and because like Makishima, his psychopaths went down to 0. We haven't seen that done before, so maybe he's an extreme criminally asymptomatic person.
I think that's exactly the case. Is that he has some understanding of how to manually control it to the slightest extent. I know that seems really ridiculous, but here's where I think it could get a little bit interesting. These criminally asymptomatic people, we're obviously going to get brought up to the fact that there are more of them at some point later in the story. Akane being a really good potential candidate for being someone that's latent criminally asymptomatic.
I would actually just say that she's criminally asymptomatic.
Right, but it's not that she's truly like Makishima.
No.
It's that she has actually become something even greater than Makishima. When her psychopath spiked, she was able to fall back on the things that she believes and knows to be true, and it went back down rapidly.
As opposed to Makishima just doing something horrible, and that actually brought it down to near
exactly,
0.
because he represents someone that's essentially amoral. She represents someone that actually is
holds
affected
so strongly to her morals that she's not affected by
hers is more about willpower, and his is about like biology. Like his is ingrained into his. He can't stop this. Is the idea that I could see Makishima feeling a little bit enslaved to the idea that maybe at one point when he was younger he wanted to just maybe fall in line with the society, but he couldn't.
Ooh.
So that would make a big problem there.
Now
as well.
this is a crazy theory, but what if? All right. You know how there's the idea that once a character dies, or heck, with artists too, they become like 3 times more popular.
Yes.
What if this was, and this is why Makishima is so loved as a character, there comes to a point where he basically realizes that he's not needed anymore.
Yes.
And he lets his psychopaths go up to the amount so that he basically manually raises his psychopaths to the point where he can be killed by a dominator.
I think that might be the case, but I feel like this is the kind of story where he presents them with another situation where he makes them have to work outside the Sybil system's ruling.
Sure.
Or let him exist and his plan go fully into fruition. And by someone breaking the rules outside of the Sybil system, they will eventually kind of procreate basically more Makishimas. But I think if it's Akane the one doing it, for instance, and not someone like Kogami, it basically solves the whole problem, because Akane can let herself, and this is how the series could end, she lets her psychopaths go into the execute on site area and then starts to bring it back down while everyone's pointing a gun at her. Like, what did you just do?
While people are pointing a gun at Akane?
Yes, like a dominator. And her psychopath is, like 180 or something, and it's going back down. She's like, it's okay, I got this. And then they have to realize, wait, someone like Akane exists.
Okay, and that and
maybe the Sybil system isn't as cut and dry. We need to take a look at it.
And a way that Makishima could take down the Sybil system is if he basically said that no, the criminally asymptomatic people, it's not actually something that's biologically different about them. It's something that's mentally different, maybe.
Okay.
And because of that, it's actually something that theoretically anyone could do.
Oh, sure.
But they just maybe don't know how.
I'm kind of curious why Makishima hasn't made his attacks more public. Like right now, I feel like he's building up towards something, and him doing something and letting the effect of Sybil System's inability to really judge him be made public. Like, he could do tons of damage that way. But I think that kind of betrays the fact that that's not his plan, because unless he's not, like I said, he's not some genius hacker. He has his buddy who's a great hacker. I think he would have done that by now. Like,
sure.
Like, he could have had that whole scene with Akane. I don't think he predicted that scene with Akane.
No, I think that was on the fly.
Yeah, he was
But I think now he's going to take much more of an interest in Akane.
Sure.
Especially if he finds out that that she's still just fine. Her psychopath is,
Yes, good point. Kogami would essentially lose interest to him. Here's another thing to bring up. So, these criminally asymptomatic people that they've obviously kind of quieted at some point in the past, what happens to them? Because after they've studied them, let's say, okay, it's obvious that they at least study them, right? And scan them and maybe even dissect them. What if they, at some point actually find a use for them? Like, an actual,
possibly
living, functional use.
Okay, well, here's
the part that I'm like...
Well, if the prison for the people with psychopaths over 300 is also a place where they keep people that are criminally asymptomatic, in secret.
Yes, sure.
Then they could use them as sources of, information or, almost for, getting in their heads and seeing what they think about things,
Sure.
Maybe to help catch other criminally asymptomatic people.
Possibly.
But... Okay, now this is maybe a bit of a crazier theory. What if they use them as detectives? They basically...
That was actually what I was going for, actually. I think that when they were mentioning this with the drones basically being equipped with dominators, and they're saying, that we can't actually do that. What if they're actually wanting to take that next step towards that, and criminally asymptomatic people are a means towards that end?
Sure.
I mean, I think that's a little bit of a problem waiting to happen if they did that.
Especially since there aren't very many of them.
Sure. But
And if there were too many of them, then it would kind of undermine the Sybil system itself.
But they could have, like, a special division, you know?
Yeah. I could totally see there being, like, a Black Ops division of criminally asymptomatic people that are, like, the super enforcers.
But that's the thing, though. They would still have to be brainwashed. They would have to be controlled by the Sybil system.
Right. And then there's the question of if you brainwash somebody to that extent, would they still...
would it work?
Would it work? Or would they still be criminally asymptomatic? Because
Who
I get the
knows?
feeling that it's their identity and their beliefs and all that stuff, you know, who they are mentally, that's one of the things that helps them be criminally asymptomatic.
Yeah. I mean, we don't know what actually brings
works.
them to that whole state of mind. But the fact that Makishima and Akane have shown those parallels of being able to quickly drop their psychomatic scores, psychopath numbers, during and or after some very traumatic, violent thing.
Yeah.
It just makes them similar, and it draws a path towards them being converging at the end of the story. So
man,
it's just going to be good.
And okay, all right, can we just talk
the second part?
That second part. I love how they delivered that.
It was so good.
It was so good. I did not see it coming.
It coming at all.
Because it's like, oh yeah, Masaoka, he did need a little bit of backstory. Ginoza, he needed a little bit of backstory. And now we see why we didn't actually see them like in flashbacks and stuff, because it would reveal stuff. And then he just and here's the other thing. It made sense for him to go up to talk to Masaoka about Akane.
Yeah.
Like Masaoka is that kind of guy, right?
Yeah.
And then when it's just like mentioning, you know, mom and all that stuff.
Because the counselor was like, maybe you should talk with your father. It's I can't do that. It's not that simple. I was like, oh, right, because your father is a latent criminal.
Right.
I remember him mentioning that, but he never said, like, who.
Yeah.
And I keep forgetting every once in a while that enforcers are latent criminals. Mm-hmm. And then, what do you know?
Oh,
what do you know?
And it was so great because they had already set up Masaoka to be sort of the father
dad.
figure, the dad
he is a father
of
figure.
The Force.
Right.
So the fact that he is
he's literally the father of the leader of that force.
And here's the other thing I absolutely love. It's just so great that they're making the angstiest, most like, you know, like
Kogami is pretty angsty.
Well, okay, Kogami's pretty angsty, but Ginoza
has some issues.
Ginoza just shouts issues, right?
Yeah.
Like Kogami at least owns them. Ginoza for a lot of the show is sort of in denial of them. So it's like, hey,
sure, in denial, absolutely.
He has daddy issues, and Masaoka.
Oh man, because
that was great.
Because what's funny is Ginoza, all up until this point, has kind of had that, I would say, a little bit like kind of self-righteous approach to a lot of things.
Yes.
But up until recently, we've seen that shaken because of things that have happened in his environment and with his team and stuff. But in particular, we haven't really seen like that really reasoning of guilt as to why he, at the very least, is in this job with this kind of attitude. I think that to an extent we can infer that he wanted to be like Dad. And he became an inspector or detective, just like his dad Masaoka was. Right. And he had to watch him being the new young rising star as his father switched from that role of being a true detective to being a dominator holder, basically.
Right.
And it actually ruined his father's career and his father's like psyche to some extent.
Right.
By the Sybil system's ruling. And Ginoza just handles it just fine, and he has to have that cognitive dissonance with wanting to be like his father, but not wanting to be like his father. As his father takes that path. It's so good.
Okay. Self-righteous characters are hard to do and make them be characters that you sympathize or empathize with. Exactly. Characters that you like, because self-righteousness is not something that's
attractive or magnetic or anything like that. No.
Now, one of the ways that people can get around that is you basically show that they actually like are self-righteous for a reason, because they work they work harder than anybody else to make sure that they're always doing the right thing, you know, and going above and beyond. But then you have the problem of, okay, what about flaws?
Right, where are they struggling?
Exactly, where are they struggling? Mm-hmm. And this, like, this was done so well. Like, this episode didn't feel like it was focused on Ginoza, but it absolutely, like, bumped Ginoza way up on the ladder as far as, you know, favorite characters in this show.
It does a lot for him, because what we have up until this point is a character who's, like you said, in denial.
Right.
Just not really letting themselves come to grips with the fact that their strongly held beliefs and ideals aren't correct. They're flawed.
And they're very cold to anybody else who questions those
I would say, to an extent, that's a very human thing to do.
Yes, it is.
That's not a strictly self-righteous person kind of thing.
No, I know. But that's not necessarily something that will make us like them as a character.
No, but cognitive bias is a real thing.
Yeah.
Like, you search for
totally
the things that reinforce your currently held beliefs.
What is it? What's that line from Gurren Lagann? The one thing you believe, that is the truth of your universe.
Oh, sure.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, speaking of other, works in this, they had Heart of Darkness.
Yeah.
As a book that was just perfectly timed with what they were talking about between Ginoza and the superintendent of the Sybil system lady.
I'm so glad that they brought her back.
Wait, hold on. That's not Ginoza's mom, though.
No, that's Ginoza's boss.
Right, Ginoza's boss.
Yeah.
But the thing is that, do you get the creepiest vibe from her?
Oh yeah, and I did the first moment Ginoza talked to her, so I was like,
yeah, previously,
please bring her back. And
well, she's back now.
She's back,
and we now get not only her motives, but we get a little bit of her means to
exactly. And
boy,
one other thing I want to point out, even before the whole reveal with Masaoka being Ginoza's dad. Because I really hate it in stories when they rely on the familial relations that no one knew about in order to provide development for people. It's like when they do that for romance or something like that. You can't have just that. Mm-hmm. But right before that, I'm all worried that this scene's just gonna go really badly, and Ginoza starts being a total bro and standing up for Akane, while the person above him, the superintendent, whatever lady, is sort of prodding him to see what he'll do to see if he'll stick with it before she reveals.
Right,
the
exactly.
secret.
In a way, you caught on to it in that she was starting to agree with him at some point, but then she starts to lead him.
Right,
and you start to see her language become even more and more manipulative.
Yeah, and
what that sounds like is someone that. I mean, this is going to sound crazy here, Jacob, but what if society is led by criminally asymptomatic people? People like her who essentially are above Sybil system.
And the reason why I could totally see that happening is because when you have a society where people can basically get black bagged and taken off to a facility just because of their crime coefficient, which is basically just a bunch of data on their mental state and things.
Right.
How do you actually take it anywhere? Because you would have this danger of key people just being taken out of the loop, right? Just cogs in the great machine just disappearing and being
because they experienced too
somehow.
much of the Sybil system's dealings,
and especially if you think about it, because leading any great as in large organization is going to be stressful at best.
Yeah.
So. Yeah,
to an extent, I think that they actually have key criminally asymptomatic people placed in society in such a way that they're being heavily monitored and heavily put there, but they're put into places where they need them.
Okay, so you know how they talked about how, what was it, even the politicians and leaders of our country or whatever are just decided by Sybil?
Yep.
What if they were specifically so that you have basically the president or whatever, you just make sure that they're a criminally asymptomatic person that is and
in line with the ideals of everything.
In line with the ideals of everything, and find them
puppet.
early on. Yeah.
Or if anything, they're just a puppet, a spokesperson.
Sure, exactly.
So I think to an extent that that makes sense, because then you can add the human element or the drone element, where these very important people have to be safeguarded and protected.
Exactly.
So we have tons of people watching them constantly.
Yep.
And those people watching them are not watching them because of their safety. They're watching them to make sure that they don't do anything wrong in society.
Sure.
Yeah. It's like, oh yeah, the president, he's got like 25,
Secret Service
security
people,
guards and
which
stuff.
of course are equipped with dominators, or
Well,
actually,
not dominators.
No, they wouldn't be equipped.
Yeah, they would not
Ooh,
be.
That's crazy to think about, actually.
Yep. Isn't that great, though? One of the things that I was thinking of is also people that are aware of what Sybil system is doing. So if the whole perception thing equals reality, or shapes your reality in this regard, kind of how it is with inspectors that end up becoming enforcers because they perceive too much of what's going on and end up becoming criminals. Exactly. What human element is involved in the Sybil system? Because to an extent they might have to go over stuff that this potential AI is, looking over and stuff.
Well, it's the inspectors, isn't it?
I don't think so. I think there has to be some kind of trickle-down effect where it's not just the inspectors getting straight data from Sybil. I think that there's some kind of management effect, and those people might be some criminally asymptomatic people.
Like Ginoza's boss.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I just think the more and more we get into learning about Sybil system, we find out how integrated, connected people like Makima are actually connected to the Sybil system.
Yes. And one other thing I want to point out.
Yeah.
Psychopaths has done an amazing job so far of developing this world.
Yes.
Whenever you have a sci-fi story, one of the big things you want to make sure that you suck people in on, same with fantasy, is the world that they're in. Because a lot of the times, especially you see this after things like Lord of the Rings or whatever, where suddenly every generic fantasy story has elves, orcs, dwarves
and wizards.
Dwarves and wizards. No hobbits, though, because they aren't very cool. But, and that's unfortunate. It makes them forgettable. And here in Psychopaths, they come up with this very unique world, and they haven't done they've been very good with the exposition side of things, where they keep it to a minimum, or they'll weave it into conversation and things like that, so that there's a reason we're covering this aspect of the world right now.
Correct.
And making it so that we have a good enough understanding of it at the beginning, so that it doesn't feel like we're missing out on stuff, and then adding to it as it goes by, because this was episode 13.
Yeah.
And, just good job. Great job.
Great job. I can now see why this is the, in the top 20 of Japan's, greatest anime of all time. Yeah.
This is good.
It's really good stuff. And it's funny because we can come off of an episode like this, the episode prior to this, and have an episode like this. Makes me wonder, were the writers were there multiple writers involved with this show? Because I can get the idea that there's a vibe in even the dialogue interactions. We can tell sometimes that writers have that kind of stylistic difference when you see their writing and stuff. I would wager that there is at least more than one writer involved in this show.
Well, was this an original show, or was it based off of a manga?
Good question. Someone sounded off in the comments. Was Psychopaths based off of a manga, or was it an original show? Yeah, we'd love to know.
Yeah.
God, I feel like I'm so close to actually getting some big reveal about the Sybil system, because what we have thus far is a lot of variables still.
A lot.
And we got a few ways in that they connected, but by actually adding the criminally asymptomatic variable into the mix, we now get a name for what we suspected all along with Makima, but we don't actually have a way in which it connects to the Sybil system yet.
Sure.
But I am I can feel it. It does. It totally does. And this whole thing of what they're doing to bring him in alive, it's something big, because one of the ways that this show can end is an ending where they actually evolve the Sybil system in a way to where Makima did succeed in his goal and that he changed society, but he didn't destroy society.
Sure.
And I think that us finding out to an extent, what the Sybil system is down to the very deepest part of its core, there's people like Akane and Makishima that will actually end up changing it for the better, both each in their own unique ways. So I'm just I'm so excited now.
They really are doing an amazing job of giving foreshadowing and like building anticipation for things, so that as stuff happens, we will be surprised by it. Like this episode, there were a few surprises, and episode 11, that was a surprise.
Fantastic, yeah.
But it's one of those surprises where you're like, oh my gosh, that totally makes sense.
Totally makes sense, yeah.
And that's really tough to do, especially to the amount that they've been doing it. Because a lot of times, stories will rely on the things where it's like, shock! But then it falls flat, and you're just like, okay. The only reason why I see that having, making there be a point to it being in there is just for the shock value. And Psychopaths hasn't been doing that.
They really haven't. In fact,
it's been awesome.
The more times where we saw that happening was when we didn't understand the world in its entirety in the beginning.
Sure.
And now that we understand the world more and more, things start to make more sense.
Yep.
So it's just good. Other than that, I loved the bit with Akane actually going through the memory.
Yes, that was very well
recall,
done.
Essentially. You could say it was partial recall. But the funny thing is that Ginoza had that very emotional, visceral reaction to her psychopath spiking and then going down, and we haven't really seen him interact with Akane in that way.
Nope.
And it was kind of harsh to see him be like, Akane, wake up! Like he's getting scared for her. He slaps her, and it's kind of like, whoa, dude, like calm down. But in a way, he was actually helping her.
Yep.
But I want to go a step further. I want to say that because he sees Akane as this person who is this ironclad representation of how someone could live well within the Sybil system, he's actually put a lot of his faith and hope in her getting through this whole thing.
Yeah, okay.
So that if she was to fall, if they were to lose her...
If Moe Jesus died...
No, seriously. No, think about it seriously. He would feel lost as well, because if there's no hope for her, how can there be hope for him?
Yep.
I just wanted to bring that up.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And also, I just want to point out that now that we know that Masaoka is Ginoza's dad, that gives us some extra context for all those times that Masaoka stepped in and
kind of resolved
things when Ginoza was acting up.
Yep. Oh
and
man, that's so true.
I can totally imagine Ginoza in his mind being like, "Stop it, Dad! We're at work."
Yeah. On a very horribly sad note, though, do you realize what they just did, though? They gave a way for the emotionally cold person to now have an emotionally charged response when Masaoka dies.
I know. Yeah, this was the ultimate death flag for Masaoka.
Yep.
And it sucks, especially
Yep.
Because here's the thing.
Yep.
I think I said this in a previous video. When you kill a character off, you can't just make it... Oh, yeah, I said this in the podcast about the revenge stories and stuff. You can't just make it so that we care about the person that dies. You also need to make it so that we care about the person who cares about the person that died.
Exactly.
And they did that this episode. So they could definitely kill Masaoka off.
And it would be
soon. And it would be horrible. It would suck.
It would affect
so bad.
everyone. In fact... I would go so far as to say that if Masaoka dies,
it could make
Ginoza would be
a latent
criminal.
Yep, yeah. And then Akane would literally be the one leading them because Ginoza is now an enforcer.
I don't want that to happen, but
I want it to happen.
I kind of want it to happen.
I want it to happen so bad because we don't want it to happen, but we really do.
Yeah, it's true. Partially because I like kind of feeling the ego effect of I was right all along, But
sure,
but also it's going to be so juicy in terms of storytelling.
Yes. So dang juicy.
So Masaoka, R.I.P. dude.
It's been really nice knowing
really
you.
Nice knowing you. I feel like we could maybe get another episode or two with him though.
Oh, absolutely.
He doesn't have to die immediately. That would be a bit cheesy, I think. Let's make it make sense.
By the way, he's his dad. Oh, is that a sniper on that roof?
Oh, that's horrible. I think to an extent we need to see a couple character deaths though.
Yes.
I would like to see I don't want to see Ginoza die now.
No.
I kind of did want him to die, but
well,
now
in a way,
I don't.
Ginoza becoming a latent criminal and an enforcer
Oh,
is
he's
his character
so good.
death.
That is a really good character development too.
Right.
That actually, if he becomes a latent criminal and they don't like fully resolve his development, that actually kind of makes me want to watch season 2, even though I've heard it's so bad, because he would carry that over, right?
You're gonna carry that weight? Is that what you're saying?
Wow.
And that could be a way where we get an awesome, like, bro squad moment where Ginoza and Kogami both go after Makishima as enforcers.
Oh, dang. To an extent, I don't think he would be able to quickly just jump into it like that. I think they would actually put him in prison. I think it would be a
for
thing,
at least a little bit.
For at least a little bit, yeah. But to an extent, you know what that also means is that the people that Ginoza are handling, they're frozen essentially. They don't operate as enforcers because no one's there to go with them. Or they would just be permanently locked at headquarters and they wouldn't be able to go out in the field.
Yeah, or they...
Who is Ginoza's... Is it Kunizuka?
Yeah, Kunizuka and, I believe, Kaguri.
Okay, so then...
Or it might be Masaoka, but I don't think so.
I think Masaoka and Kaguri kind of have this, like, slightly independent thing going on. It's just whoever is needed at the time to go out with the inspector, they go out.
Yeah.
But more directly, it's Kogami and Kunizuka that are the...
I could totally see Akane, though, like, just basically being the inspector.
The only one?
The only one with, like, 4 enforcers, you know. Oh, yeah. That would be pretty cool. That would be legit.
To an extent, that's another mirroring of how the Sybil system uses people that break the rules.
That's
the enforcers,
true.
Which I think is foreshadowing, actually, a little bit of how they're potentially using the criminally asymptomatic.
Well, especially since if it got to that point, it would be a team of enforcers under a single criminally asymptomatic person.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. They've been setting this up for the beginning. This is so good.
And they'll be going to fight another criminally asymptomatic person and his enforcers.
Team of enforcers, exactly. Wow. Oh my
gosh.
This is a good show, guys. Yeah. All right, well, we've discussed for quite a long time. Holy crap, it's been an hour. But if you want to watch the next episode of Psychopaths, go check out the link in the description for our Patreon, and you can get all up in that. And then we will see you next time. But until then, we're Semblance of Sanity. I'm Caleb.
I'm Jacob.
And we'll see you all next time.